The sentence people remembered was not the one my wife said about my memory. It was the one she whispered afterward. Put his keys in the freezer this time. Somewhere ridiculous. Then Melissa will finally believe us. Her voice came through the small conference room speaker clearly enough that no one had to ask whether it was really her. My son lowered his head. My daughter covered her mouth. And Elaine, the woman I had slept beside for 41 years, stared at the polished table as if the grain in the wood might open and swallow her. But that was not the recording that ended our marriage. It was not even the cruelest one. The recording that broke something inside me came 23 seconds later, when my son asked what would happen if I discovered what they were doing. Elaine answered him in the same gentle voice she had used for months whenever she told people I was becoming confused. He won't know what he discovered, she said. That's the whole point. People have asked why I did not shout when I heard it. They have asked why I did not call her a liar, throw my wedding ring across the table, or demand that my son leave the room. The answer is simple. By then, the anger had already passed. The paperwork had been signed. The accounts had been changed. And the document my wife wanted me to sign, the one she believed would give her control of almost everything I had spent a lifetime building, was sitting in front of my attorney with a red line drawn through every page. Welcome to Wise Dad Stories. These are stories about men who were patient, not powerless. Men who understood that love requires generosity, but dignity requires a boundary. If stories like this speak to you, stay with me and tell me where you are listening from. I always like knowing where the Wise Dad family has gathered. My name is Walter Briggs. I was 68 years old when my wife began telling people I was losing my memory. Before I retired, I spent 37 years installing fire alarms, access control systems, and security cameras in hospitals, schools, warehouses, and government buildings across western Pennsylvania. I was never the man in the expensive suit giving the presentation. I was the man behind the wall, tracing the wire everyone else insisted was dead. I learned early that buildings remembered things people forgot. A door controller recorded which badge had opened it. A smoke detector stored the time it first sensed heat. A camera marked movement down to the second. People could argue. Systems usually did not. I was not a dramatic man. My father used to say that a hammer was useful because it struck once and meant it. I tried to live the same way. Elaine and I had been married for 41 years. We had 2 children, Melissa and Aaron, and one granddaughter named Sophie, who was 15 and possessed the uncomfortable habit of noticing what adults hoped she would ignore. Our marriage had not been perfect. No honest marriage is. We argued about money when we were young, about Aaron when he was reckless, about my working too many Saturdays, and about Elaine's habit of buying decorative pillows for chairs no one was allowed to sit in. But we had survived layoffs, my father's death, Aaron's car accident, and Elaine's breast cancer. During the year of her treatment, I learned how to measure medication, wash her hair without pulling it, and make oatmeal exactly thin enough that she could swallow it after chemotherapy. She once apologized for needing so much help. I told her there was nothing shameful about leaning on the person who had promised to stand beside you. For years I believed she remembered that. Aaron was 38 when the trouble began. He owned a commercial remodeling company called Briggs Interior Group, though there was not much of Briggs in it beyond my surname and approximately $140,000 of my money. The business had started well. Aaron was charming, energetic, and good at convincing restaurant owners that their tired dining rooms could become profitable if they trusted him with a renovation. He was less gifted at estimating labor, paying taxes on time, or refusing clients who wanted champagne work on a tap water budget. 8 years earlier, when one failed hotel contract nearly destroyed him, I had sold a small hunting cabin my father left me near Tionesta. I received $86,000 after fees and taxes. $62,000 went directly toward Aaron's payroll and tax debt. The rest covered materials for 2 unfinished jobs. I never told Melissa. I never told our friends. I did not even tell Aaron the cabin had been sold until the papers were finished. A father does not hand his son a receipt for love. At least, that was what I believed then. Aaron repaid $15,000 during the first 2 years. After that, payments became irregular, then disappeared. I let them disappear. Elaine said he was building something that would eventually belong to our family. I told myself she was right. 3 years before the recordings were played, Aaron asked me to sign a personal guarantee for a larger credit line. I declined. Not because I wanted him to fail, because I had reviewed his books. There were unpaid suppliers, delayed payroll taxes, and several withdrawals labeled owner distribution during months when the company had reported losses. I told him I would help him meet with an accountant. I would help him restructure. I would even lend him a smaller amount against written terms. But I would not attach our home and retirement savings to a business whose numbers he refused to face. He did not shout. Aaron rarely shouted when charm might work better. He smiled, leaned back in the chair, and said, "You've always been cautious, Dad. That's why you never built anything big." Elaine told him that was disrespectful. But later, upstairs, she said I had embarrassed him. He asked for faith, she told me. He asked for a guarantee, I answered. Those are different things. That disagreement never truly ended. It simply went underground. The first time Elaine joked about my memory was at Melissa's house during Sophie's 14th birthday dinner. I asked whether anyone had seen my glasses. Elaine laughed and tapped the front of my shirt, where they were hanging from the collar. "Walter's having another senior moment," she said. Everyone smiled. I smiled too. There was nothing unusual about forgetting glasses that were 6 inches from your chin. 2 weeks later, she mentioned that I had asked the same question twice about our electric bill. I did not remember asking it twice, but I could have. A month after that, she told Melissa I had driven to the hardware store and forgotten why I went. That story was partly true. I had gone for furnace filters and returned with screws, a length of copper pipe, and no filters. Men have been doing that in hardware stores since the invention of hardware stores. But Elaine did not tell it as a joke. She placed her hand over mine and said, "We need to start paying attention." I noticed the change in her tone before I noticed anything else. It was softer than usual. Patient. Careful. It was the tone people use with a frightened child or an unpredictable dog. After that, small things began disappearing. My truck keys were not on the hook where I had hung them for 20 years. The notebook where I recorded household repairs vanished from my desk. A property tax notice I had placed beside the coffee maker appeared 3 days later in the laundry room. Once, I found my wallet inside the cabinet beneath the bathroom sink. Elaine stood in the doorway while I held it. Her expression was not amused. It was concerned. "You put it there, Walter." I did not. "You must have. I have never stored my wallet beside the toilet cleaner." She sighed, walked over, and touched my arm. "That is what worries me. You are so certain." The line stayed with me. Not because it proved anything. Because it had been prepared. Elaine began accompanying me to appointments I had always attended alone. She answered questions doctors directed at me. She kept a written list of incidents. On Tuesday, Walter forgot the name of the neighbor's new dog. On Thursday, Walter left the garage light on. On Saturday, Walter accused me of moving his checkbook. The first two were ordinary. The third was not an accusation. She had moved it. I found it later in a drawer where she kept table linens. When I asked why it was there, she said I must have placed it there while looking for stamps. I began to wonder whether something truly was wrong with me. That was the most effective part of what she did. She did not simply lie to other people. She placed me in a room with my own doubt and quietly locked the door. I started writing down where I left things. I photographed the stove before going to bed. I checked the calendar 3 times. I stood in the basement one afternoon holding a screwdriver, unable to remember why I had gone downstairs. For 10 frightening seconds, I believed Elaine. Then I saw the loose plate on the old alarm panel and remembered. I had gone down to remove it, but the fear did not leave with the memory. It stayed in my chest like cold water. I made an appointment with Dr. Neha Patel, a geriatric specialist at Allegheny Memory Health. I did not tell Elaine. Dr. Patel interviewed me for nearly an hour. She tested my recall, attention, language, spatial reasoning, judgment, and ability to plan tasks. She ordered blood work and reviewed my medications. 2 weeks later, I returned for the results. Her office had pale green walls and a clock that ticked loudly enough to become annoying. She folded her hands and told me I showed no evidence of dementia or significant cognitive impairment. My processing speed was normal for my age. My memory scores were above average. I asked whether stress could make a person feel forgetful. Absolutely, she said, especially if someone is repeatedly telling that person not to trust his own recollection. She watched my face when she said it. I did not explain everything. Not yet. I requested a written report. Then I went home and placed it inside a blue fire-resistant document pouch in the locked cabinet beneath my workbench. That detail mattered more than it seemed. Our house had 4 exterior cameras, a video doorbell, and 2 cameras inside the attached garage. I had installed them after a series of garage burglaries in our neighborhood. One camera faced the large door. The other covered my workbench, the side entrance, and the cabinet where I stored tools and household records. Both were visible. Both had small red status lights. Elaine and Aaron knew they recorded sound because Aaron had helped me test the microphones. The recordings automatically deleted after 30 days unless they were marked for retention. For years, the system had captured nothing more interesting than delivery drivers, squirrels, and me muttering when I dropped screws. Then the blue document pouch disappeared. I discovered it missing on a Thursday morning. The cabinet was still locked. There was no damage. The spare key, which I kept in a sealed envelope inside the kitchen desk, was also gone. I asked Elaine whether she had opened the cabinet. She looked genuinely hurt. Walter, listen to what you're asking me. I am asking whether you opened it. Why would I go through your things? The medical report was inside. Her expression changed for less than a second. Most people would have missed it. I had spent 37 years watching for the small flicker on a control panel that told you which circuit had failed. I don't know anything about a medical report, she said. Then she added, maybe you never put it there. That afternoon, I checked the security system. The camera showed Elaine entering the garage at 10:43 the previous night. She carried the spare cabinet key. She unlocked the door, removed the blue pouch, and took it into the house. There was no audio beyond the soft scrape of the cabinet hinge. I watched the clip 3 times. I did not confront her. Instead, I called Marco Ruiz, a former employee who now ran his own security company. I told him I believed someone had been tampering with files and asked him to preserve the previous 30 days of footage. Marco came the next morning with a laptop and an external drive. He did not ask questions until he saw Elaine take the pouch. Then he removed his glasses and said, Walter, does she know you're checking this? No. Do you want me to restore the remote access logs too? That was how we discovered that several recordings had been deleted through the household administrator account. The account was registered to Elaine's tablet. Marco recovered most of them from the system archive. I asked him to copy everything without reviewing the audio. I wanted a complete record, not a witness influenced by my version of events. The first recording I listened to was from the garage 6 days earlier. Aaron's truck was parked outside. He and Elaine stood near my workbench. The camera caught only part of Aaron's face, but his voice was clear. He's never going to sign while he thinks he's fine, Aaron said. He is fine, Elaine answered. That's why this is so difficult. I paused the recording. For one foolish second, I felt relieved. She knew. She knew my mind was sound. Then Aaron said, So what are we doing? We're documenting a pattern. You're creating a pattern. I'm helping people see what he refuses to see. There are lies spoken to deceive other people. Then there are lies people repeat until they become rooms they can live inside. Elaine had built herself one of those rooms. In her version, she was not betraying me. She was saving Aaron from my unreasonable caution. She was protecting our family from a stubborn old man who had become an obstacle. Aaron asked whether Melissa believed I was declining. Not yet, Elaine said. But she's noticing. She said he seemed normal. He always seems normal for short periods. That's what I told her. Then they discussed the document. Aaron's attorney had prepared a durable financial power of attorney naming Elaine as my agent and Aaron as alternate. It included authority over real estate, banking, business interests, investments, and certain trust transactions. They planned to present it as a precaution. Once it was signed, Elaine intended to use my funds as collateral support while Aaron negotiated a new credit facility. I was not sure every part of their plan would have worked legally. That was not the point. They believed it would. They believed my signature was the last door between them and my money. Then Elaine said, "Put his keys in the freezer this time." Somewhere ridiculous. Then Melissa will finally believe us. Aaron laughed nervously. "What if he figures out what we're doing?" "He won't know what he discovered," she said. "That's the whole point." I removed my headphones. The garage felt unusually cold, though the heater beside my bench was running. On the wall hung a photograph of Elaine and me taken during our 30th anniversary trip to Maine. She was standing beside a lighthouse with the wind pulling her hair across her face. I had spent years believing the woman in that photograph was the truest version of her. Maybe she had been. Maybe people did not become entirely false just because fear made them cruel. But cruelty did not become harmless because it was committed by someone who had once loved you well. I did not sleep that night. At 3:17 in the morning, I sat at the kitchen table with the medical report Marco had found in a drawer on Elaine's side of our bedroom. Beside it was the unsigned power of attorney. My name had already been printed beneath the signature line. A yellow note marked the page. "Walter signs here. Not Dad. Not my husband. Walter." A task to be completed. The next Sunday, Elaine invited Melissa, Sophie, Aaron, and Aaron's wife Jenna to lunch. She told me she wanted the family together because she was worried about me. I already knew what was coming. I had met with my attorney, Hannah Pierce, on Friday. Hannah had handled our estate planning for 12 years. She was 51, precise, and incapable of pretending a bad idea was a good one to make someone feel comfortable. I showed her the medical report, the proposed power of attorney, and the recordings. She did not dramatize her reaction. She simply removed her glasses and asked, "Do you feel safe returning home?" That question hurt more than anger would have. "I am not afraid she'll harm me physically." That was not exactly what I asked. I told her I would remain in the house until the family meeting. Then we discussed what I legally owned, what was marital property, what accounts were joint, and what actions required a formal process. The law was not a hammer I could swing because I was hurt. It was a set of measured tools. Some things could be changed immediately. Others could not. Hannah made sure I understood the difference. Sunday arrived with freezing rain. At 12:08, Aaron carried a white bakery box into the dining room as though we were gathering for an ordinary family lunch. Elaine had made chicken casserole and green beans. Sophie sat across from me, twisting the silver ring she wore on her right thumb. There was a thick, cream-colored folder beside Elaine's plate. We ate for 11 minutes before she reached for it. "I need everyone to listen without becoming defensive," she said. That was Elaine's favorite way of announcing that someone else was about to be accused of something. She placed her hand over mine. I left my hand still. "Your father has been struggling." Melissa looked at me. "With what?" "Memory. Judgment. Confusion." Elaine opened the folder and read from her list. I had misplaced my wallet. I had forgotten a bill. I had become suspicious. I had left the stove burner on. That last incident was new. "I did not leave the stove on," I said. Elaine gave me the patient look. "You did, Walter. I found it after you went to bed." Sophie stopped twisting her ring. "No, Grandma," she said. Elaine turned to her. Sophie's voice became smaller, but she continued. "You were cooking tea. Grandpa was already upstairs. I saw you turn the burner off. The room changed. Not dramatically. No one shouted. But Aaron looked at Elaine, and Elaine's hand withdrew from mine. "You must be thinking of another night," she said. "It was Tuesday," Sophie replied. "I was here because Mom had the dentist." Melissa looked from her daughter to Elaine. "What exactly are you asking Dad to do?" Elaine recovered quickly. Nothing frightening. We want him to sign a precautionary power of attorney while he is still able to understand it. While he is still able, the sentence settled on the table between the casserole dish and the untouched bakery box. Aaron pushed the document toward me. "It doesn't change anything right now," he said. "It just gives Mom the ability to help if something happens." I opened the folder. I read the first page slowly, though I already had a copy. Then I looked at Aaron. "Why are you named as alternate agent?" He glanced at Elaine. "In case Mom can't serve." "And why does it grant authority over my trust?" "That's standard language. It was not in the power of attorney Hannah prepared for your mother 7 years ago." Aaron's jaw tightened. Elaine sighed. "This is exactly what I mean. You get lost in details and assume everyone is against you." I set my fork down. Not hard. The silver touched the plate once. "Elaine, are you telling this family that I am no longer competent to manage my affairs?" "No one said incompetent. You said I might soon be unable to understand a legal document. We are trying to protect you." "From whom?" "From yourself, Walter." I looked at my wife. I gave her one last opportunity to step back from the edge. "Did you move my wallet?" Her face became still. "No." "Did you take my medical report from the garage cabinet?" "I have no idea what report you keep talking about." "Did you and Aaron move my keys and other belongings so the family would believe I was forgetting things?" Melissa whispered, "Dad, what are you saying?" Elaine stood. "I will not sit here while a confused man interrogates me." That was the moment. Not the recordings. Not the missing report. Not even the power of attorney. That was when I stopped hoping she would choose the truth without being forced to face it. I closed the folder. "I have an appointment at Hannah Pierce's office tomorrow at 10, I said. "All of you are invited." Aaron scoffed. "Why would we meet your lawyer?" "Because she has the original estate documents, and because I would prefer that the next conversation happen in a room where no one can hide my keys." Sophie looked down, but I saw the corner of her mouth move. The following morning, the conference room smelled like coffee, damp wool, and the lemon cleaner Hannah's receptionist used on the table. Elaine arrived with Aaron. Melissa and Sophie came separately. Jenna stayed home. Marco sat near the wall with his laptop. Hannah began by explaining that the meeting was private, not a court hearing, and that nothing played in the room was being presented as a judicial finding. She also stated that Elaine and Aaron had known cameras with audio capability were installed in the garage. Aaron crossed his arms. "This is absurd." Hannah looked at me. "Walter?" I nodded to Marco. The first clip showed Elaine removing the blue pouch from the cabinet. No one spoke. The second included her conversation with Aaron about documenting a pattern. Melissa's face lost its color. Then came the keys. "Put his keys in the freezer this time. Somewhere ridiculous." Sophie stared at her grandmother. Aaron shifted in his chair. The final sentence followed. "He won't know what he discovered. That's the whole point." Marco stopped the recording. Elaine did not deny her voice. She did not claim the audio had been altered. She looked at me and said, "You do not understand the pressure Aaron is under." I waited. She continued. "His company could collapse. People could lose their jobs. We were trying to create a temporary safety net. By convincing my family I was losing my mind, you would not listen." I listened. I said no. "You made one decision without understanding what it would cost our son." I understood exactly what it might cost him. That is why I offered an accountant instead of another blank check. Aaron leaned forward. "You wanted to watch me fail." I turned to him. "I sold your grandfather's cabin to keep your employees paid." He froze. Elaine closed her eyes. Melissa looked at me. "What cabin?" "The Tionesta property. You told us the roof damage made it worthless." That was easier than explaining why I sold it. Aaron's voice dropped. "You said that money came from savings." It did. My father's savings, in the shape of 40 acres and a 2-room cabin. The room stayed quiet. I had never wanted credit for helping him, but hidden sacrifice becomes dangerous when the person receiving it rewrites generosity as weakness. "You did not ask me for help this time," I said. You built a plan around my refusal. You moved my belongings, hid a medical report, created false incidents, and told my children I could not trust my own mind. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. I was scared. I believe you. That answer surprised her. I believed fear had driven her. Fear for Aaron. Fear of his failure. Fear that our family would blame her if she did not save him. But fear explained the road. It did not excuse where she chose to drive. Hannah slid Dr. Patel's report across the table. Walter completed a comprehensive cognitive evaluation, she said. The report found no evidence of dementia or significant cognitive impairment. Melissa read the first page. Sophie looked at me with tears in her eyes. I knew you remembered, she said. I smiled at her. I did too most days. Then Hannah placed the proposed power of attorney beside the report. For clarity, she said, Walter has not signed this document. He has revoked any prior financial authorization that could be interpreted as granting Aaron access or agency. Formal notices have already been sent where necessary. Aaron's confidence finally disappeared. What notices? That was when the paperwork began to finish the sentence they had started. On Monday morning, before the family meeting, I had changed the administrator credentials on the home security system, my email, my mobile account, and every personal financial portal Elaine or Aaron might know. I did not touch Elaine's private accounts. I did not take $1 that belonged to her. I simply stopped leaving my own doors open. At 9:12 that same morning, Hannah sent written notice revoking the limited financial power of attorney I had signed years earlier during Elaine's cancer treatment. The document had allowed her to manage household bills if I became unavailable. I had forgotten it still existed. She had not. By Tuesday, Aaron was removed as an authorized user from a small business credit card I had allowed him to use for emergency purchases. There had been 11 non-emergency charges during the previous 4 months, including restaurant meals, a hotel suite, and 2 payments to a luxury car service. I paid the legitimate balance because the account was mine. Then I closed it. On Wednesday, I canceled the monthly transfer of $2,400 from my investment account to Aaron's company. Elaine had called the transfers temporary support. They had continued for 31 months. Aaron had received $74,400. He had never mentioned them when accusing me of wanting him to fail. On Thursday, I notified his bank that I would not sign the renewal of the personal guarantee attached to his equipment line. I had guaranteed the original, smaller line 5 years earlier. The guarantee was due for renewal in 90 days. I could not erase an existing obligation simply because I was angry. But I was under no duty to volunteer for another term. The banker confirmed that without additional collateral, Aaron would have to reduce the line, bring in a new guarantor, or restructure his debt. The law was not quick, but it was patient. On Friday, I moved my pension deposits and Social Security payments into an individual account in my name. I left enough money in the joint household account to cover ordinary expenses, while Elaine and I worked through a formal separation. I did not empty the account. I did not strand her. I stopped allowing her to treat the income I had earned as an emergency reservoir for Aaron's business. The following week, Hannah amended my revocable trust. Our house had been purchased with money I inherited from my father and had been held in that trust for 17 years. Elaine had marital occupancy and statutory rights that could not be erased by a dramatic signature. Hannah explained every one of them. The separation process would take time. Property division would follow the law. There would be no instant eviction, no suitcase thrown into the rain, and no fantasy in which marriage disappeared because one spouse had behaved badly. But Elaine would not become trustee. Aaron would never control the house. Melissa became the successor trustee, with an independent professional named as co-trustee if I became incapacitated. That was the authority Elaine had been trying to reach. It was now beyond both her and Aaron. 2 weeks later, I updated my beneficiaries. I provided fairly for Elaine within the legal advice I received and the obligations created by 4 decades of marriage. I was not interested in pretending our entire life together had been false. But the large discretionary inheritance Aaron expected was redirected. Half went into an education and housing trust for Sophie. The other half was designated for a scholarship fund for apprentices entering electrical, fire alarm, and security system trades. Young people willing to learn how buildings remembered would receive the money my son believed had already become his. The largest domino fell at the end of the month. Aaron's bank rejected his expanded credit request. Without my guarantee, without my monthly transfers, and without access to the home as collateral, his rescue plan collapsed. His company did not close immediately. Real consequences rarely arrive as neatly as they do in stories. He sold 2 vehicles, laid off an office manager, and entered a formal restructuring plan with the accountant I had recommended 3 years earlier. He was angry. He called it betrayal. But for the first time since starting the company, he was required to run it using resources that belonged to him. Elaine moved into a furnished apartment 6 miles away, while our lawyers worked through the separation. I helped pay the deposit. Some people told me that was foolish. It was not. A boundary did not require cruelty to prove it was real. The visual consequence came on a gray Saturday morning. Aaron arrived at the house and entered the code he had used for years on the side garage door. The keypad flashed red. He tried again. The lock remained closed. I watched from inside. Not with pleasure, with sadness. He knocked. I opened the door but did not invite him in. You changed the code. Yes. I need the tax records from the cabinet. I gave copies to your accountant. He looked past me toward the workbench. You're treating me like a criminal. No, I'm treating the house like it belongs to me. His jaw tightened. Mom says you're destroying the family. Your mother and I are speaking through counselors and attorneys because she tried to take control of my affairs through deception. She was trying to help me. I know. Then why are you punishing her? I am not punishing either of you. He laughed bitterly. You cut me off, changed the trust, blocked me from the house, and embarrassed us in front of Melissa. I played your own words in a private room after giving both of you a chance to tell the truth. He looked away. For the first time, he appeared less like an angry businessman and more like the boy who used to stand in my garage asking whether he could hold the flashlight. I'm your son, he said. I know. You're supposed to help me. I did. I mean now. But I studied his face. I love you, Aaron. I will always love you. But love and access are not the same thing. I am still your father. I am no longer your funding plan. He did not answer. I handed him a business card. It belonged to the restructuring accountant. He said you missed Thursday's appointment. Aaron looked at the card but did not take it. You expect me to crawl back to the man you picked? I expect you to decide whether saving your company matters more than protecting your pride. I placed the card on the porch railing and closed the door gently. He took it before he left. Elaine and I met in Hannah's conference room again 6 weeks later. There were no children present. No recordings. Just the 2 of us, our attorneys, and a marriage counselor named Judith Lane. Elaine looked older. I probably did too. She had written a letter acknowledging that she moved my belongings, hid the medical report, misrepresented incidents to our children, and participated in an attempt to obtain financial authority through deception. The letter was one condition before I would consider speaking to her privately again. Counseling was another. Complete financial separation from Aaron's business was the third. She had met the first 2. The third remained difficult. He's our son, she said. Yes. How do I watch him struggle? The same way I watched him struggle, by offering help that does not require surrendering your judgment. She cried quietly. I thought you would forgive me before you let him fail. I may forgive you. She looked up. May? Forgiveness is not the same as returning the keys. She nodded slowly. Then I placed an envelope on the table. It did not contain a will. It did not contain a deed, a trust amendment, or a bank statement. Inside was a letter Elaine had written to me 17 years earlier during her cancer treatment. I had found it in a box of hospital papers while reviewing our records. She had written it after a particularly bad night, when fear and medication made her accuse me of hiding information from her doctors. The next morning, she apologized. Her letter was 3 pages long. I did not read all of it aloud. Only one line. When I am frightened, Walter, remind me that fear can make control look like love. Elaine covered her face. I left the letter in front of her. That is the woman I married, I said. I do not know whether she is still there, but if you find her, tell her I remember. We did not reconcile that day. A warm ending is not always a restored marriage. Sometimes warmth means refusing to let bitterness become the last thing two people share. Our legal separation remained in place. Elaine continued counseling. She rented a small townhouse near Melissa and began volunteering twice a week at the cancer support center where she had once received treatment. Aaron hired the accountant. His company became smaller, less impressive, more honest. He sold the leased luxury truck and started visiting job sites in a used Ford van with paint marks along one side. He did not apologize immediately. Men often cling to pride after it has stopped protecting anything. But 4 months later, he came to the house carrying my old business card from the restructuring accountant. It was bent at the corners. I should have taken your advice the first time, he said. Yes. He waited for me to soften the answer. I did not. Then he said, I'm sorry. It was not a complete apology. He did not yet understand every part of what he had done. But it was the first honest sentence he had given me in a long time. I let him into the kitchen. Not the garage. Not the office. Not the accounts. The kitchen. We drank coffee. That was enough for one day. Sophie visited every Sunday. We started rebuilding an old tabletop radio I had stored in the basement since the 1980s. She learned to solder without burning the circuit board, though she did burn the corner of my work mat and insisted the mark gave it character. One afternoon, she asked whether I hated her grandmother. No, I said. Are you still mad? Sometimes. Do you think you'll forgive her? I think forgiveness is a road. Trust is the gate at the end. They are not the same distance. Sophie considered that. You always talk like an old instruction manual. That is because nobody reads instruction manuals until something breaks. She laughed. The house became quieter after Elaine moved out. At first, the quiet felt empty. Then it began to feel honest. I no longer photographed the stove before bed. I stopped writing down where I left my keys. They stayed on the hook. The blue document pouch returned to the locked cabinet. Dr. Patel's report remained inside, though I no longer needed to read it for reassurance. I knew who I was. I knew what I remembered. And I knew the difference between a mistake made by an aging man and a lie designed to make that man doubt himself. My marriage may or may not survive what happened. That truth was still being written. But my dignity survived. My relationship with Melissa became stronger because the truth was no longer hidden behind family politeness. Sophie learned that respecting elders did not mean ignoring what was being done to them. Aaron learned that a father's support was a gift, not a permanent financial structure. And Elaine was given the opportunity to become accountable without being publicly destroyed. That was all I could fairly offer. People still ask what was inside the document folder Aaron pushed across the lunch table. They assume it was simply a power of attorney. It was more than that. It was proof of what they believed my love entitled them to take. They mistook my silence for confusion. They mistook my generosity for dependence. They mistook a long marriage for permission to rewrite my reality. Then the house remembered what they thought I would forget. A wise father does not need to shout when the truth already has a timestamp. Now tell me honestly, was I too hard or not hard enough? I read every comment. And if this story reminded you of someone who mistook kindness for weakness, subscribe to Wise Dad Stories. There is always another quiet truth waiting to be told.